I'm probably going to rub some people the wrong way with this video, but it's okay. Y'all will be all right. We all know there is a wealth gap in America. Now, depending on who you ask, that gap gets bigger or smaller. In 2018, there was a survey done, and it said that white people thought that black people had at least 80% of their wealth. That means they thought that if they had $10, that black people at least had $8, right? But in actuality, in that same year, the U.S. Census Bureau showed that black people only had about 9% of white people's wealth. That means if white people had $10, black people didn't even have a dollar. They had 90 cents. The top 100 richest white people in America own more wealth than the entire black population combined. Now that includes Oprah, ball players, entertainers, you name it. Migos, Jay-Z, everybody, right? The top 5 biggest white landowners own more land than the entire black population combined. So there's obviously a gap. The question is why? And that's what we're going to talk about in this video. What's up, everybody? I want to thank you for tuning in to my channel. You're watching Minding Your Biz with me, Ivory Orr. I'm an entrepreneur here in the state of Florida. I've been involved in a lot of industries, mostly entertainment, but I've also been involved in politics. I've had a restaurant, I've had a radio show. I've done a lot in my life, and God willing, I'm gonna do a whole lot more. But on this channel, we're talking about building wealth. And we do that through entrepreneurship, real estate, stocks, and a lot of other investment strategies. If this is what you're serious about, then you're in the right place. Just do me a favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so that you're notified every time we drop a video. Now, in this video, we're going to talk about the reasons for the wealth gap between black people in America and white people in America. Now, the first topic is obvious. It's the elephant in the room. Everybody talks about it, but I don't want to spend too much time on it just because honestly, even though it is a huge reason for the wealth gap, it's not the only reason for the wealth gap. And my people sometimes get so stuck on this one issue that they don't deal with the other issues. So I want to touch on it, but I don't want to dwell on it, all right? The first thing I want to discuss is racism. Now, when I say racism, I'm not talking about somebody not liking you because you're black. That's actually prejudice. And in this country, it's actually legal to be prejudiced, right? But in order for it to be racism, there has to be a system in place that oppresses you because of your race. Let's talk about some systems that were in place in this country that oppressed black people that made it hard to build wealth. The first system that I want to discuss is also obvious: slavery. So for 400 years, black people were slaves in this country. So in the race to build wealth, white people had a 400-year head start. You cannot get more obvious than that. Everybody talks about it. Now, what people don't talk about quite as much is the next 100 years. See, slavery ended in 1865. All right. Now, the Civil Rights Act wasn't passed until 1964. So almost 100 years goes by. All right. During that time, our country operated under what's called Jim Crow laws. And all that is a legal system that set a limit on the types of jobs that black people could get, how much they could get paid for those jobs, and even what cities they could live in. Excuse me. So I can only get a certain type of job. I can only get paid so much for that job. And certain cities, I can't even go in to compete for a job or start a business, right? Under those circumstances, it's understandable why it would be hard to build wealth and therefore hard to pass that wealth down to your kids and their kids and so on and so forth, right? Let's talk about another system. I'm from Jacksonville, Florida. We're a military town. My military people should feel this. Now, in 1944, the GI Bill was passed. The purpose of the GI Bill was to help veterans with education, jobs, and housing, right? But if you lived in the South during that time and you were in the military, it was legal for states to deny you your benefits. So you couldn't use your benefits to buy a home, which you could then pass down to your children, or to get an education, which would prepare you for a higher paying job, or to start a business, which would be the foundation of your family legacy, right? So again, this was a system in place that made it hard to build wealth. Let's talk about one more system, housing. Now, the Fair Housing Act wasn't passed until 1968. Before 1968, it was legal to discriminate based on race, whether or not you sold somebody a house or rented them a house, right? So my mom was around during the 60s. My grandma was around during the 60s. I'm sure many of your parents and grandparents or family members around during that time. Well, if they were black, it was legal for somebody not to sell them a home because of the color of their skin. So if it was harder for them to get a home, which is one of the cornerstones of building wealth, home ownership, one of the cornerstones of building wealth in this country, if they couldn't get a home, they couldn't pass it down to their kids. Their kids don't know what it's like to live without a mortgage or rent and be able to save that money to build wealth. It's harder to build wealth under that scenario. Now, again, we're talking about systems that were put in place in the past. And these are things that are very real, but at this point, we can't change them. What I want to do now is I want to talk about things that we can change. The wealth gap in this country between black people and white people would practically disappear overnight if we can change this one thing. And that one thing is our mentality. If racism put us in a hole, our mentality is what keeps us in that hole. And what do I mean by mentality? And first of all, before I go any further, I want to say that I am the biggest culprit. I'm the biggest example of somebody who had a terrible mentality when it comes to finances and money, right? And it didn't change for me till about 2 years ago when I went through one of the hardest times of my life financially. I had two of my most successful businesses close at the same time for factors that were beyond my control. It just fell that way. Kind of like how this oil crisis and the COVID-19 all hit at the same time, right? It just happened to fall that way, and it really hurts our economy bad. Well, I had two successful businesses for factors out of my control close at the same time, right? And it was a wake-up call for me, because even though those were very profitable businesses and they were big for my finances, it shouldn't have hurt me as bad as it did. And the reason why it did hurt me so bad is because up until that point, I was generating so much money and I wasn't being financially responsible with that money, right? I didn't know what to do with money. So 2 years ago, I had to get a wake-up call. I read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And one of the biggest points that stood out to me and still stands out to me this day is he discussed the difference between the thinking between rich people and poor people and some of their habits, right? And one of the things he said was that rich people and poor people, they both like luxury goods, right? They both want nice things. They both want the nice car, the jewelry, the clothes, all of that, right? But it's a big difference, right? Poor people take the money from their job, from whatever they do for a living, and they use that to buy those nice things, right? Rich people, they get the nice things, but they take the money from their job or from their business and they invest it first, right? They invest it into something that makes them more money. And then they use the money that comes in from that asset, that investment, to buy the luxury car, the luxury clothes, the jewelry. So that's the difference. Poor people skip a step. And black people, what's even worse about us, we've been trained to fall in love with the luxury good. And what we don't understand is there's a difference between assets and liabilities. The things that we fall in love with, the cars, the clothes, the jewelry, those are liabilities. A liability is something that costs you money every month. It costs you money to have this item, right? We should be seeking to put our money into assets. An asset is something that makes you money just by having the item, right? You don't have to do anything else but have it, and it makes you money, right? we have fallen in love with liabilities over assets. And again, it goes to our mentality. I mean, so many of us, not everybody, but so many of us, we'd rather look like money, talk like money, and smell like money, even if that means we don't have any money, right? We'll spend our last to look like we have something. You understand? And again, I was the biggest person with this, man. Once I started making some money, I wanted to shine. I wanted to let people know I was getting it. And that's a big flaw in our culture. Some of it stems from our music. We listen to these rappers tell us we gotta get these chains and these certain types of cars. You gotta wear designer and all of this. And fortunately for me, being in the business that I'm in, I get to meet a lot of those people, right? And when you meet a lot of these people, man, it lets you down because you find out most of that stuff is not the truth. I'm trying not to cuss because my mama and my grandmama might be watching this, right? But most of that stuff they tell you is not true. A lot of that jewelry they're wearing is fake. The cars are leased, and they don't own these types of things. They're not living like they're telling you that you have to live. And you're buying into it, and you're trying to live a lifestyle to keep up with your favorite artist. I don't want to say no names because I don't want to offend nobody. But you're trying to live a lifestyle to keep up with them, and they're not even living that lifestyle. But meanwhile, our community is falling further and further behind because we're spending all of our money on liabilities. And then, when you try to tell a black person, hey, take some of that money and invest. Now, they want to tell you they're scared. Whoa. I don't know nothing about the stock market. Hold on. I don't want to invest in that. What if I lose all my money? I don't know if I want to start a business, man. What if that's kind of risky. Well, never mind. You already broke because you working your regular job and you getting paid every week, but you're not spending the money right anyway. So you broke up anyway. You feel me? So it's a problem with the mentality. And that touches another thing. We have been trained to be the worker bees of society. We black people, growing up, any black person, especially my age, I know they've heard the way to succeed is you go to school, you go to college, you graduate, you get a good job, and that's success, right? And don't get me wrong, it is nothing wrong with that. It's nothing wrong with that, but that path is not for everyone. That's not the only path, right? So for some people, that's the path they have to take because that's the only option that's really on the table for them. But we're blessed to be in a time where there are more options on the table. But as black people, we mentally cut those options off. We'll rather say, hey, man, let's go to school. I'm going to go to college and I'm going to get in all this student loan debt and I'm going to get a degree that I'm not going to use. Or even worse, I'm not even going to finish school. I'm going to go to school for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, and then I'm going to stop, right? I'm going to have a philosophy degree. And now I'm in debt. The degree I have is not making me money. And had I used that same amount of money that I spent on college and invested it, even if I just invested in the stock market, or if I invested in real estate, I would be further ahead in life. There are more options on the table for us. Your grandparents, they probably didn't have some of the options that you have. So it makes sense that they said, hey, the formula is, go to school, get a job, because at one point they couldn't go to school. They couldn't get that job. So I understand why they say that. That makes sense for them. You understand? So it's not wrong what they said. It's simply just we have to update our thinking. Every year, some of y'all go out and get an iPhone, right? iPhone come out with a new iPhone like every single year. Ain't nothing wrong with the old one, but you got to get the new one because it come out. You upgrade your phone every year. It is time for us to upgrade our thinking, right? So that we still have the ability to do what our grandparents and parents and our forefathers did before us. We want to be able to do it their way, right? We need to have that tool in our tool belt. But we need to add a few tools. Every time the iPhone come out, they got all the same features that they had before, right? But they always add something new. It's a new Bitmoji or Memoji or something dumb you can do, a slow motion picture. It's something you can do that you may or may not use, right? I'm recording this on the iPhone right now. Half the features on the iPhone I will never use, but I have the option to use them, right? Somebody is going to use those features. And our community has to just open ourselves up to all the features that are available to us right now in society. So I'm talking about mentality again. And one of the biggest things that is wrong with our mentality is we have a mentality that tells us not to invest. We are scared to invest. Listen, we think it's safer to work for somebody all of our life, right? But we're going through a big crisis right now. How many people are laid off? How many people are, losing their job, or furloughed is the term that's going around, right? Their jobs are getting pushed back. So a job is pretty risky as well. I'm a control freak, right? When I get in the car, I like to drive, right? Now, the person who's in the passenger seat, they're not driving the car. If they're riding with me, then they're at the mercy of my driving skills, okay? So if I drive bad and I crash that car and we hit a tree or hit a pole, they can die too. You understand? So they're taking a risk by getting in a car with me and giving the control to me. That's the same thing that you're doing when you go work on a job every day, right? And again, it is nothing wrong with getting a job. I just want us to stop thinking that's the only way, because in order for us to build wealth, we have to expand upon that. Even if you work a job, okay, that's great, cool. Take that job, save that money, and invest that money. Invest it in real estate, invest it in stocks, invest it in a business, whatever. The average millionaire has 7 streams of income. Start working on your streams. If your job is your only stream of income, that's risky to me. That sounds risky to me. If you only have one way to make money, if something happens to that one way, what you gonna do? So we have to change our perception and our concept of what's risky and what's not risky. We have to invest. Our mentality when it comes to investing just has to change. When black people statistically are last in home ownership, we're last in land ownership, we're last in stock market investing. So you can't tell me that it's a coincidence that we're last when it comes to the wealth gap. And yeah, some people might say, hey, we're also last when it comes to wages. And you're right. The average white person gets paid 35% more than the average black person for the exact same job. So yeah, that's a problem. But all that tells me is, okay, if we're last in our wages and our earnings, then why are we first in spending? See, you can't tell me it's not money in the black community, because the black community spends $1.3 trillion. Trillion with a T, not an M, not a B. A T. $1.3 trillion every year in America. Every year. We spend, the amount we spend every year is equal to a lot of countries' total economy. That's the economy of Switzerland. That's the economy of the Netherlands. It's a bunch of countries. Some countries don't even make that much a year. They don't even generate that much a year, right? If black people moved to Switzerland, they would probably treat us like kings and queens, because overnight we would double their economy. You understand? So we're spending the money, but again, mentality. If we're last in earnings, why are we spending the most? Why are we the buyers instead of the sellers, right? We create the culture. We create most of the things that get sold, right? Our music and our culture is leading the way when it comes to pop culture. We tell people how to dress. We tell people what to listen to, what to eat. We influence pop culture so much, but why are we the ones purchasing it? So again, man, it's just a mentality shift. And now let's talk about your most important resource and how we're investing it. Because money is not your most important resource. Don't let anybody ever tell you that money is the most important thing, because it's not. The most important resource that you have is time, right? They make money. You can print money. Matter of fact, you don't even have to print money no more. You can go to a computer and type in money and create money out of thin air. You understand what I'm saying? So money is not your most important resource. You can create that. You can't create time. You know, the second that you have right now, you can't get it back. Once it's gone, you can't get it back. Yesterday, you will never get it back. You can't type it, you can't print it, you can't conjure it up. There's nothing you can do. Your time is your most important resource, right? But how are we investing our time? Guess what race in America spends the most time watching TV? Guess what race spends the most time seeking entertainment? Nielsen, that's the company that does TV ratings, and they track internet uses and data across a bunch of different medias, right? Black people spend 51 and a half hours a week seeking entertainment. That's 11 hours more than the national average, right? The whole country is in the 40s, right? But black people, no, we've surpassed that. We 51 and a half hours a week. We could tell you everything that happened on Love and Hip Hop, on the Netflix show, on the sports game. We could tell you everything. You understand? Guess who spends the most time on social media? On Instagram. We might as well, if you don't invest in any other stock, you better invest with Zuckerberg, because we spend so much time on Instagram and Facebook that we're making this guy rich. You understand? So we might as well get rich too if we're going to use a product like that. You understand? We are investing our time in the wrong things. And again, it's nothing wrong with getting on the gram. It's nothing wrong getting on TikTok or getting on Facebook or watching TV. It's nothing wrong with that. But if you're trying to close a wealth gap, if your race had a 400-year handicap, and then for another 100 years you had to run with weights on, if you're behind, then you have to work harder than the person who had the head start. You have to work harder than the person who's in the lead, right? If we're going to catch up, if we're going to close this gap, we're going to have to change our mentality. We have to change some habits. So let's move on to the next point. The last thing I want to talk about, and it goes along with everything else I've been saying about this wealth gap, is a lack of financial knowledge, right? Black people have a lack of financial knowledge or financial literacy, right? And I'm a big person on taking ownership and taking responsibility for your actions and your own problems in your own community. This is our fault. Why do I say this? Because it's not the responsibility of white people to teach you financial education. Why? Because they don't teach it to themselves. They don't teach their kids this, right? You can make a lot of money, move your kids to a nice white school district if you want to, and I guarantee you they're still not going to teach the kids there about credit and real estate investing, stock market investing, things like that. And I mean the basic stuff. You won't learn it in any school anywhere. Listen, I went to college. I got 2 degrees, and I didn't learn, and they were both business degrees. And I didn't learn this stuff I didn't learn the things that I'm going to teach you on my channel. I didn't learn them in school. I learned them by getting out in the real world and doing business and studying and reading and checking out articles and watching videos. Like, I had to learn a lot of this stuff hands-on, and that's just how it is. So how do we learn it? Listen, I don't like to read, I'll be honest with you, right? But I'm not going to let that stop me from getting a financial education. So, hey, if I got to go ride in the car and instead of listening to my favorite rapper who's lying to me, I got to turn on an audio book about real estate, then that's what I got to do, right? Because one way or the other, I need this knowledge. Like, if I have to get on YouTube and watch YouTubers that do stocks for a living, if I got to go read financial articles, if I got to watch videos, whatever I got to do, it's my responsibility to educate myself. The financial industry is the biggest industry in the world. How can we as a people afford not to know anything about it? That's what stops most of us from investing. And it makes sense. If you don't understand the stock market, then why would you put your money into it? I get that. That makes a whole lot of sense. But it's okay that you don't know. It's not okay that you're not trying to learn about it. You know, that you're not trying to say, hey, what is this? What should I be investing in? You know, what is an S&P 500? What's an ETF? You know, what's an index fund? What's a mutual fund? What's a bond? You should be asking these types of questions. These are the types of conversations you should be having. It's okay to tell me, you know, what LeBron did last night. It's great. But LeBron's already rich. You understand? LeBron probably got more money than you, your whole family, all your friends, everybody you went to school with combined, right? So he can afford not to have that conversation. And I guarantee he ain't talking about you. You feel me? He not going to Anthony Davis saying, man, hey, let me tell you what homeboy doing over there. You know, no, he don't care what you doing. You understand? So I'm not saying that you shouldn't, you know, have fun and watch TV and do all this stuff. I'm saying we have to be as passionate as we are about other things in life, about other parts of our culture. We have to be as passionate about, you know, getting a financial knowledge. I know some black people, especially in my generation, that will argue you down. They will fight you about Tupac. I know some people will fight you about Michael Jordan. I know some people in this generation will fight you about LeBron. You see what I'm saying? But I don't know anybody who will fight you about, you know, mutual funds or about, you know, real estate. You understand? Because we're not as passionate about that. And that's what has to change. We have to educate ourselves on the biggest industries in this world. The industries that are creating the most millionaires the fastest in this country, in this world. We have to be educated on it. We have to be up on it. We have to be involved in it. We have to be passionate about it. And if we do that, we're going to close the wealth gap. And with that being said, I just want to thank everybody for watching this video. I know it got kind of long. I got in my feelings a little bit, you know, because this is something I am passionate about. If you like this video, do me a favor, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. And I just want to thank you again. You're watching Minding Your Biz with Ivory Orr. Peace.